Welcome to Psyche Talks. Today we're diving into a fascinating concept. What if the ultimate secret to, lasting success isn't really about raw talent or just getting lucky? What if it's something far more accessible, something really within everyone's grasp? We're talking about the ability to learn faster, adapt quicker, and, well, continuously stay ahead in this world that just changes so fast. Our source material for this deep dive is this really insightful audiobook. It promises to reveal the hidden formula the top 1% use to stay ahead. So our mission today is to unpack this whole idea of lifelong learning. We want to understand how it really differentiates those who soar from those who, well, stagnate, and pull out the most potent insights for you.
Yeah, it's really compelling how this source just immediately challenges our usual ideas about achievement. It suggests that two people, maybe starting from pretty similar points in life, can end up on wildly different paths, and not because of like inherent talent or, privileges, but simply because one kept learning and the other just stopped.
Stopped learning.
Yeah, and that brings up a really crucial question for all of us, doesn't it? Are we, maybe without realizing it, holding ourselves back, by believing that education just sort of ends after school?
Right. The diploma is framed on the wall, and that's it.
Exactly. So we're going to explore why this, what the source calls the brutal truth about continuous learning, isn't just nice to have, but absolutely vital in a world that's constantly, relentlessly evolving.
Okay, so if continuous learning is the bedrock of this hidden formula, let's dig into how the source really shifts our view of success. Moving us past just, innate talent makes a pretty bold claim. The second you stop learning, you start losing.
Wow, that's stark.
It is. It argues that knowledge isn't static. It's either expanding or it's shrinking. There's no, neutral gear. And people who really get this dynamic, they're always in control of their future.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening who's ever felt stuck or maybe watched opportunities just pass by, the source suggests it's not really about a lack of capability.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's more about a lack of consistent commitment to lifelong learning. It hints that many of us, after we graduate, we just kind of go on autopilot. We assume what we already know
Yeah.
is enough. But in today's world, that's rarely true.
That really leads to a fundamental shift in how you see things, doesn't it? The world, well, it honestly doesn't care much what you knew 5 or 10 years ago. It cares about what you know and what you can do right now. Today, industries are just evolving so incredibly fast, skills become obsolete quicker than ever.
Faster than you can update your resume sometimes.
Aha, exactly. And the source makes this powerful, almost unsettling point. Experience without growth is just repetition.
Ooh, say that again. Experience without growth is just repetition.
Yeah. Think about it. Someone might have 20 years of experience doing the same thing, but if they haven't actively tried new approaches or sought feedback or pushed their boundaries, are they really growing or just reinforcing old habits?
Just digging the same rut deeper.
Precisely. Now, the top 1%, the source says, treat education completely differently. It's like a daily, non-negotiable habit, like brushing your teeth. They get that real success isn't just static knowledge, it's about how fast you can learn. So this focus on agility, on continuous self-upgrade, rather than just accumulating facts, that's the big differentiator. They're actively, almost aggressively upgrading themselves.
Well, maybe the rest of us haven't picked up a challenging book since college.
Or really questioned our own thinking, yeah. It's a different operating system entirely.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The mindset piece. The source spends a lot of time on this. It basically says the real difference between those who excel and those who stay stuck isn't luck. It's not even raw intelligence.
Yeah.
It's profoundly how they think about learning.
The mindset.
Exactly. It points straight to Carol Dweck's work, the psychologist, her whole concept of fixed versus growth mindsets. And honestly, for so many people, understanding this distinction, how we view our own abilities, it can be a total light bulb moment.
Definitely. A fixed mindset, as the source explains it, is that belief that your talents, your intelligence, they're just set in stone. You're either good at math or you're not. You're creative or you're not.
Which leads to avoiding challenges,
Yeah.
right? Because failure feels like a judgment on your fixed ability.
Exactly. You fear failure. You see effort as a sign you're not actually talented. If you were really smart, it'd be easy, right? That's the fixed mindset trap.
So the crucial question for you listening is, are you operating with that fixed mindset? Maybe telling yourself, I'm just not a tech person.
Yeah.
Or public speaking, not for me.
Or are you embracing a growth mindset? Seeing challenges not as threats, but as invaluable opportunities to learn and develop, understanding that effort, persistence.
Yeah.
That's how you cultivate abilities.
The source is pretty adamant here. It argues that to really get ahead, to be ahead of like 99% of people, a growth mindset isn't just helpful, it's essential.
It really is. And it offers this incredibly simple yet powerful trick to start shifting that internal conversation. Just add the word yet.
Yeah.
Yet. So instead of, I'm not good at this, you consciously reframe it, I'm not good at this yet. It sounds small, but that tiny linguistic shift can fundamentally change how you see challenges and progress.
I'm not good at remembering names yet. I like that.
Exactly. And beyond that, the source really emphasizes embracing curiosity, just relentless curiosity. It points to people like Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs. They never stopped asking why or what if. They stayed curious.
Like kids, almost.
In a way, yeah. And crucially, we need to reframe how we see failure. The source doesn't see failure as the opposite of success.
Okay.
It sees failure as the process of success. It's unavoidable, often uncomfortable, sure, but it's a necessary step on the way forward.
Makes sense. You learn more from mistakes sometimes.
Absolutely. And it reminds us every expert was once a beginner. Every single one. The people who really pull ahead, they're the ones who never stop asking questions, never stop exploring, and fundamentally never stop trying, even after setbacks.
That's incredibly powerful. Okay, so if adopting that growth mindset is step one, how does the source say we translate this into, actual daily actions? It sounds like it's not asking for huge chunks of time, right?
No, quite the opposite, actually. It really emphasizes the power of daily learning. It confidently states that even just 10 minutes a day can change your life.
10 minutes, that sounds almost too simple.
Well, think about the analogy it uses. It likens consistent learning to investing.
Compound interest for the brain.
Exactly. The earlier you start and the more consistent you are, the more powerful the results. It paints this vivid picture. Contrast someone who basically stops learning after college with someone who commits to just 10 minutes a day. Consistently. After 5 years, the person doing 10 minutes a day has grown exponentially, maybe picked up new skills, opened up new opportunities, while the other person, largely static, maybe even falling behind.
Wow. That really puts it in perspective. Those small bits add up massively over time.
They absolutely do. And this highlights how these small, consistent daily actions are the real game changer. Not these, occasional bursts of motivation or some grand heroic effort.
We all know how quickly those bursts fade.
Right. The source totally debunks that myth of overnight success. It states pretty unequivocally that pretty much all success stories are built on years of persistence, dedication, and small daily actions. It's in those quiet moments, the consistent effort when nobody's watching, that's where the real progress happens.
So what's the practical advice for building that habit? Just deciding isn't enough.
True. The source gives a pretty clear roadmap. First, start small. Really small. Maybe just 10-15 minutes of reading or one specific learning task. Make it almost laughably easy to begin with.
So you can't fail.
Exactly. Second, set a specific time and place for it. Create a trigger, like after my morning coffee, I read for 10 minutes at the kitchen table. Third, consistency is king. Be ruthless about it. Fourth, track your progress. It even mentions the Seinfeld strategy, get a calendar, mark off each day you do the habit with a big X. Soon you have a chain, and your only job is don't break the chain.
That visual motivation.
Yeah. Fifth, be patient. Results aren't always instant. And finally, reward yourself for hitting milestones. And here's a key insight. It says willpower is overrated.
Really? We hear so much about willpower.
Well, it argues willpower is finite, it gets depleted. Systems, on the other hand, are key. Good systems make the right actions easier and automatic. They set you up for permanent progress, even when motivation dips.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Build the system. Don't just rely on feeling motivated. So speaking of practical tools within that system, this deep dive highlights two really powerful ones: reading and focus.
Ah, yes, the essentials.
The source calls books the secret weapon of high achievers. It points to people like Bill Gates, 50 books a year, apparently.
Oh.
Warren Buffett spends maybe 80% of his day reading. And Elon Musk, who famously said he learned to build rockets by reading books.
Well, it's incredible. They're all voracious readers.
And the point isn't just what they read, but the habit itself. Those small, consistent habits compound over time. The source even touches on fiction versus nonfiction, suggesting a balance is good. Nonfiction for practical knowledge, maybe fiction for creativity, empathy.
Emotional intelligence, yeah. But what's fascinating is how the source doesn't just say read more. It talks about how to read more effectively.
Okay, tell me more.
It shares actionable speed reading and retention techniques. The goal is to read smarter, not just harder.
Smarter, not harder. I like that. What kind of techniques?
Things like skimming, getting the gist quickly, chunking, reading groups of words instead of one by one, and actively trying to reduce subvocalization.
Subvocalization. That's the little voice in your head reading along.
Exactly. Reducing that can significantly speed things up. And for retention, which is just as important, it's about active engagement, not just passive reading. So take notes, highlight key points, and maybe the most powerful one. Teach what you've learned to someone else. That really cements it.
Right. You have to really understand it to explain it. Makes sense. So beyond reading, the other superpower mentioned is focus.
Absolutely critical.
The source states it pretty bluntly. You can't achieve anything meaningful if you don't learn to control your focus. And that feels so true today, doesn't it? With distractions everywhere, notifications, email, social media, our attention is constantly under attack.
It really is. High achievers, the source argues, understand this. Deep, undisturbed focus is their unfair advantage.
So this leads to the obvious question. Are you, listening right now, falling prey to what the source calls the truth about multitasking?
The myth of multitasking.
Yeah, which the source calls a major productivity killer. It even cites studies. Apparently, multitasking can slash your productivity by up to 40%.
40%? That's huge.
And get this, it can take over 23 minutes and 15 seconds to be exact, according to the source, to fully regain your focus after just one distraction.
Wow. That's staggering when you think about how often we get interrupted.
Right. So the source strongly advocates for single tasking, just doing one thing at a time with your full attention and creating distraction-free environments, turning off those notifications, closing tabs, maybe using something like the Pomodoro technique.
Yeah, the Pomodoro technique is great for that. Those focused 25-minute bursts with short breaks. It helps maintain concentration without burning out. The source also talks about the science of deep work, that state where your mind is operating at its absolute full capacity on a single, tough task. And it emphasizes the power of saying no, learning to guard your focus fiercely like a precious resource.
Because saying yes to the unimportant stuff means saying no to the important stuff.
Precisely. Every time.
Okay, it really sounds like a lot of this journey, the learning, the focus, the habits, it all comes down to building serious internal strength.
That seems to be a core theme, yes.
The source makes this compelling argument that motivation is unreliable. It's fleeting, right? Comes and goes.
Like the weather.
Exactly. Instead, it says, discipline is the invisible force behind every high achiever. And I love this quote. Success isn't about how motivated you feel on any given day. It's about what you do when you don't feel like it.
That really hits home. It shifts the focus entirely from waiting for inspiration to just doing the work. And building on that, the source frames self-discipline almost like a muscle, something you can intentionally train and strengthen.
You can actually get better at being disciplined.
That's the idea. It suggests you can literally rewire your brain to favor discipline over instant gratification. It introduces something called the no excuse rule. Basically, disciplined people don't allow themselves to negotiate with laziness.
Negotiate with laziness. We all know that internal debate.
Yes. And it offers a trick, which sounds almost too simple. Don't think, just do. Just bypass that whole internal negotiation that often leads to putting things off.
Right.
It then presents this really stark choice. You can have the pain of regret, which is heavy and lasts a long time, or the pain of discipline, which is temporary discomfort but leads to growth and ultimately freedom.
Choose your pain.
Essentially, yes. And expanding on this, it talks about mental toughness, stating bluntly that most people fail because they are mentally weak.
Ouch. That's direct.
It is. It identifies 3 common mistakes: avoiding hardship, letting your emotions run the show, and just crumbling under pressure. And the path to building that toughness. It involves things like training yourself to handle pain without complaining, actively controlling your thoughts to shape your reality.
Not letting negative thoughts spiral.
Right. And even putting yourself in difficult situations on purpose to build resilience, like taking cold showers or tackling that project you dread. And finally, developing an unshakable self-identity, really defining yourself as someone who follows through, telling yourself, for instance, I am someone who never quits.
Wow. That's building an internal fortress. Okay, so we have the growth mindset, we have the daily habits, we have the focus, the discipline, the mental toughness. What's the next piece? How does this all translate into actual results?
Right, because thinking and planning isn't enough. The source pushes hard for what it calls relentless execution.
Relentless execution. I like the sound of that.
It argues that too many people get stuck thinking about working hard, but they keep avoiding the one thing that actually creates results, which is
Doing the work. Taking action.
exactly action. It calls out 3 deadly traps that keep people stuck. Have you seen these? First, the learning loop. Just consuming endless information, podcasts, books, articles, but never actually doing anything with it.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
Yeah,
Information overload without application.
it's easy to fall into. Second is the perfectionist delay. Waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect skills, which, as the source says, means perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah, waiting for perfect often means waiting forever.
And third, distraction addiction.
Yeah.
Just that chronic inability to focus because we're constantly interrupted or seeking the next dopamine hit from a notification.
Okay, those traps feel very real. So how do we escape them? What's the system for relentless execution?
The source lays out a few key components. One is ruthless prioritization, the 80-20 rule. Focus laser-like on the vital few tasks that deliver most of the results.
Stop majoring in minor things.
Precisely. Then there's the no 0 days rule. Commit to making some progress, no matter how small, every single day. Never let a day pass with 0 action towards your goal.
Keep momentum going, even if it's tiny.
Exactly. There's also the time-blocking domination method, actually scheduling blocks of time in your calendar for deep, focused work and treating those blocks like unbreakable appointments.
Protecting that focus time.
Ooh, yes. And finally, the 2-minute rule for beating procrastination. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, just do it immediately. For bigger tasks, commit to starting for just 2 minutes. Often, just starting is the hardest part.
Getting over that initial inertia.
Right. And then, beyond just executing tasks, the source elevates the conversation to the relentless pursuit of mastery.
Mastery. Okay, that sounds intense.
It is. The source is clear. Mastery is painful. It often involves boring, repetitive, frustrating work. It's absolutely not for the weak. It's for the obsessed.
So not just showing up, but really pushing the boundaries.
Relentlessly. The advice is stark. Pick your obsession and go all in. Master the fundamentals completely, then push beyond them. Create an insane training routine, and critically, never stop improving. Never settle.
Wow. Okay, so all these different elements, the mindset, the habits, the discipline, the execution, the mastery, they seem to converge on one really powerful, maybe central idea from the source, the 1% rule.
Ah, yes, the 1% rule. This is a big one.
It is. The source claims, quite provocatively, that everything you've been taught about success is wrong. That real sustainable greatness doesn't come from these huge dramatic changes overnight.
Which often fizzle out anyway.
Exactly. It comes from improving just 1% every single day. That tiny, almost imperceptible effort. It compounds in ways we don't intuitively grasp.
Yeah, our brains tend to think linearly, but compounding is exponential. It's like that grain of rice on a chessboard problem. It gets massive fast. The source suggests many people fail because they're always looking for this big leap, the shortcut, and they quit when they don't see huge results immediately.
Instead of trusting the process of small daily gains.
Exactly, and that's where the real power lies, applying the science of compounding to your own personal growth. The source illustrates this beautifully. Improving by just 1% daily doesn't mean you're 365% better after a year. Because of compounding, you're actually nearly 37 times better.
37 times from just 1% a day.
That's the power of compounding. It directly contrasts this with those random bursts of motivation, which it calls massive, inconsistent action. That approach, it argues, simply doesn't work for long-term significant progress.
So how do we apply this 1% rule practically?
The framework is beautifully simple. First, pick one area to improve. Be specific. Second, set a daily minimum action that's so small, so easy, it feels impossible to fail, like literally 1 page of reading, 5 push-ups, writing 1 sentence.
Make it ridiculously achievable.
Yes. Third, track your progress and stay consistent. Build that chain, remember, and then you just let the gains compound over time. You trust the process. The simple principle, the source argues, is what truly separates the top performers, those who achieve sustained excellence, from everyone else who might start strong but eventually plateau or fade.
That's a really profound idea. Focus on the tiny daily improvement, not the distant, huge goal. Yeah. Okay, so finally, the source looks at how to maintain this edge, how to not just get ahead, but stay ahead for the long haul. What's the ultimate competitive edge?
Well, first, it issues a pretty stark warning. Complacency is the enemy.
Getting comfortable.
Exactly. It highlights how many people, even after reaching great success, eventually lose their edge. Why? Because they subtly shift from a growth mindset to a maintenance mindset. They stop doing the very things that made them successful.
They think they've arrived.
Right. Think of athletes, entrepreneurs, artists who reach the top but then fade because they stop pushing, stop learning, stop evolving. They start protecting instead of growing.
So how do you avoid that?
It connects directly back to adopting what the source calls the forever student mindset. Always learning, always curious, always improving. It points to dominant figures we've mentioned: LeBron James, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett. They exemplify this. They never stopped reinventing themselves. They never stopped growing.
They act like they're still trying to make it.
In a sense, yes. The source gives practical advice here. Constantly stay curious. Actively surround yourself with people who challenge you, who push you out of your comfort zone. Never rely on yesterday's success as a guarantee for tomorrow. And, maybe most importantly, learn to embrace discomfort. Growth rarely happens in the comfort zone.
It reinforces that the discipline of high performers isn't just for a season, like training for a marathon. It's a lifelong commitment. Ruthless consistency for life.
Exactly. And ultimately, this whole deep dive, it kind of leaves you with this profound, very personal question. Who are you becoming every single day? Success, as the source frames it, isn't some fixed destination you reach. It's a dynamic, ongoing lifestyle.
So you've heard it. Our deep dive into this hidden formula, these habits, these mindsets that seem to separate the top 1% from the rest. It really seems to boil down to a deep commitment to lifelong learning, that radical consistency in small daily habits, unwavering focus, rigorous self-discipline, and just a relentless pursuit of getting better, of mastery. It's about recognizing that growth isn't something that happens to you. It's a choice you make every single day. The knowledge distilled from this source, it's now with you. The question really isn't just what you know now, but what are you going to do with it? What single, small, consistent action will you commit to, maybe starting today, that will move you just 1% closer to your own unstoppable future?
And that leaves us with, I think, an important question for you to really ponder. In what specific area of your life are you maybe settling right now? Settling for good enough knowledge or good enough skill? And where could applying that simple, consistent 1% improvement day after day after day, where could that truly transform your path forward? Remember, the source suggests the greatest never stop learning, never stop growing. Neither should you. Thank you for your support and for listening.